90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Riley, for FM Punk. You're listening to the Voice of Nassau Community College. I've got a very special guest tonight. Long Island people might remember him from Milhouse and Celebrity Murders and probably like 20 other bands because that's how it is here. You know, city people might remember him from Indecision. Currently, he's got a brand new band out of Chicago called Ready for Death. Mr. Artie Philie. How you doing today, Artie?
Doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm having a great day. So tell me a little bit about Ready for Death, because that's how I first met you and saw you when Ready for Death came over to Long Island, played with a Two-Man Advantage and Death Cycle. Very cool show, and you guys put out a really sick record and that I really enjoyed. So tell me a little about how Ready for Death came together.
Sure. It's kind of came together organically. When I moved to Chicago in 2010, I didn't see myself ever really doing any more bands. I got married and I have 2 kids now, so I just thought that part of my life was something I would look back on. And then through my kids, I kind of met Dallas Thomas, who used to be in a band called Ash Chapel, and he played in a band called Pelican, and our kids were going to Taekwondo together, and we started doing play dates together and things like that. And then inevitably we started talking about music. And he had spent most of COVID writing songs. When we were all like locked up in our houses, he was just writing riff after riff after riff. And he's like, I want to do a death thrash metal band that's like Bolt Thrower, Possessed, that kind of stuff. And I was like, that sounds like fun. I don't know if I could really do that anymore, but I gave it a shot. And then fast forward to almost 2 years later, and we're a functioning band that plays shows, and we put out that record that was meant to be a demo. We recorded all those songs in our practice space, and we were just going to send it to some labels to see who might be interested. And we ended up Translation Lost Records out of Philadelphia. We're like, let's just put this out. We thought, okay. So before we knew it, before we even had a play to show, we had a record coming out. And that's where we're at now. We're in a mode where we're writing our second record, and we've played a bunch of shows. We're never going to be a touring full-time band, but we're doing little trips to like we played New York, and we play like Nashville and places like that are within a day or two drive. And then we're just kind of being a weekend warrior dad band, basically. But it's a lot more fun than that makes it sound.
For a lot of underground bands, I feel like that's the name of the game for most of them. Being a weekend warrior band.
Yeah.
The night before we're doing this, I was running a metal show at a VFW hall. I was like the door guy, but the promoter was out of town, so I had to make sure the bands got paid and stuff too. And when I went to give the VFW hall their cut of the money, I like joked to them. I'm like, because like I kind of spaced out for a second. I forgot how much they asked me to give them. So I'm like, I'm sorry, can you run that by me again? I'm like, I'm sorry, I had like a full 8-hour day of work before I came here, which is true, I did. And I like joked to them like, rock and roll doesn't pay the bills, Yeah,
it does not. That's very true. So we're kind of operating within that, where we're like, it's like a hobby, but it's also, there's a financial aspect to it too. So whatever, but it's fun. I mean, I can't go back to those days when we would spend like Indecision would spend like 8-12 weeks on the road in a row and like sweep on floors and eat at gas stations and stuff like that. I can't live that way anymore. My body won't allow it, and my family won't allow it.
Yeah, understandable. I think the other guys in Indecision feel the same way too. They play maybe one show a year now, compared to what you said back in the day. Like they were on the road 12 weeks out of the year or something.
Oh, that was just a 12-week jaunt would be like a normal thing. We spent, I'd say, 10 or 11 months on the road when I was in the band. We were barely ever home, and it was fun. But there's no way I could pull that off these days, and I don't even know that I want to. I kind of enjoy my domestic routine.
Understandable, and I did watch the Indecision documentary. Not really recently. I watched it like years ago. I probably should have watched it again or something more recently. But it also sounds like it was kind of a trying time for everyone in the band on top of all that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we were all in our 20s, and like, your hormones are raging, and you're not really. I don't know how to explain it. Like, I'm speaking for myself. I wasn't really mentally stable. I was like sort of very quick to anger, and everybody emotions were very high, and things were very tense, and you're very competitive, and it all comes with that kind of age, I think. And then now in my late 40s, I feel I can kind of look back on it in hindsight and say like, yeah, I was kind of a dick, and we were all kind of dicks, and it was inevitable that we were going to break up living the way we were living, and just living in a van together, boxed up together for almost 24 hours a day most of the year.
It is crazy how, like, for so long, like, so much of the music industry, a lot of people who go on tours, a lot of them start out and they're just like kids, like fresh out of high school, and now they're like on the road all the time with all these crazy things going on. It's really chaotic, and like you said, I mean, especially like hardcore kids, right? Hardcore kids are like definitely not the peak of mental stability in my experience, and that includes myself.
Right. Yeah, you don't get into punk rock and hardcore because you're well adjusted and you get along with everyone, amazingly. It kind of draws the people who are a little bit off center, and then add like financial hardship and just like life on the road and all that stuff, and it's pretty volatile.
For sure, and I mean, we are talking about the kind of music that draws the kinds of people who think like, hey, what'll be a fun Saturday night if me and my friends start throwing tables at each other.
Yeah, exactly, that kind of thing. So, it's funny because Ready for Death will play some shows like that. There's kind of a pretty good overlap between metal and punk these days, and I, people want to really party, and I'm the first one to be like, well, we played the show, sold the merch, whatever, and I'm gonna have a couple of beers and go to bed, and that's as wild as I get these days.
Like you said, like at a certain age, I feel like, your body just doesn't want to get crazy anymore. It's too much.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a physical aspect to playing that's still very, it takes a toll, but, I'm not old and frail, but I just kind of like to play and let my body kind of, that's like the level of strain I want to put on my body. And then I think I tried recently moshing again. I went to see Napalm Death and I forget who else played, but I went to see. I was Napalm Death and Frozen Soul, and I was just a little bit lit up. And I thought, I'm gonna just mosh again because I haven't in like 10 years. And I quickly realized that was the worst idea I could have had. I had to go to the dentist the next day and get my teeth fixed, and I just can't keep up,
I totally get it. Man, I just lost my train of thought for a second.
No, that's fine. I don't know why I keep going back to like how decrepit and shitty I feel all the time. But you know what? There's
definitely something to like, the performance aspect too. Like you said, I had in college, I took some like jazz improv classes. I'm a guitar player, and I really lucked out with my professor for these classes because he wasn't just like some snobby Juilliard student that was just like, I only listen to like 40s jazz music and everything else sucks. He is like in punk bands and stuff. Like he'd been in them. Like he'd play like Castle Heights back in the day and stuff. So he he kind of got me. Like he was like the only one in the room that got me for most of the time I took his class. But he explained to the other students one day, like, yeah, playing the punk rock stuff is so much harder than the jazz and classical stuff I do. 'Cause like even though you're only playing 3 chords and playing for 15 minutes, you're going up on stage, you have to jump around and give it like 110%. The other more complex genres of music, you just stand there and shred and people like applaud you for it. It's like much less, exhausting physically.
It's true. And, I've kind of come to realize that, music is, this type of music, metal, punk rock, hardcore, is listening to the songs is only a part of the enjoyment of it. It's kind of like, the presentation, the emotion that can be conveyed through the music, the lyrics, the venue that you're seeing the show in. All this plays a role into creating the experience of what it is to be involved in the quote unquote scene. And that kind of goes by a lot of people. If you just heard a random hardcore song and you're an experienced musician or a talented musician that went to Juilliard or something like that, you would dismiss it. But you're only getting one little prism or one little like color out of the spectrum, of what everything is. I don't know if I'm expressing myself too clearly. I'm half awake.
No, that's pretty on point. I've always felt that hardcore, especially, and this extends to punk and metal and the other stuff too, but I feel like hardcore in particular, like the live show is like the main vessel for which it's supposed to be experienced in many ways, so
100%. Yeah.
So much of it is like, oh, I went to see these bands and the pit was crazy and some dude got knocked out and, the guy who was singing for the band was like smashing beer bottles on his face or something, like,
right.
Like there's,
yeah.
Like you go there, you have the craziest night of your week, and then you go and you tell all your friends about it. And, I feel like that's like the main part of the experience in a lot of ways. Yeah. And I love a lot of the records too, but there's definitely it's definitely the genre of music where it has like the most bands where like, I don't necessarily care to listen to it on record, but when I go see the band live, it's the best thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, totally. And getting in the record, like I'm a record collector, and owning a record is kind of like, you don't buy a bunch of records just to kind of listen to them over and over again. You buy it as like a document or almost like a memento of a period of time of what you were experiencing when you saw that band or when you were around, that scene, and it kind of conjures all those memories, and it exists as a kind of piece of your life versus just a collection of songs. So that's how I view record collecting in that sense too. I don't know if that was a total topic shift, but I think a lot of people miss that. I think a lot of people just look at music in a two-dimensional way or look at punk rock in a very one-dimensional way, and then they miss the whole breadth of what it is to the human experience.
For sure, and I definitely feel that too, like I'll go to a show, I'll mosh, I'll like buy something from one or more of the bands. We've all got our phones now. I take a couple of pictures, I like leave the show with like things to remember with, be it a record or a shirt or even last night, like I was getting paid to be there. I could have just like collected my money and called it a day, but I went to the opening band and I bought their tape because I really liked their set, and they also happen to be friends of mine. So, I have that, and I'll remember like, yeah, this was like, it actually wasn't my first time working doors, but it was definitely the best time so far.
Nice.
I've only done it a handful of times, but like definitely the best experience I had doing it. It was, I've been a patron so many times. It was kind of cool to be on the other side of it for once.
Yeah. I mean, I did similar things in Long Island for many years, where I did hardcore shows and punk shows, and did all aspects of it from just like setting up the show to playing the show to working the door to making the flyers and all that, and it's all I feel like I took a lot of lessons from all those things that are applied to my quote unquote real life now, in terms of how to communicate, how to deal with people, how to understand where other people are coming from, and kind of put something together. Yeah, but no, it's a good experience
for sure. And it's definitely also true. It's like you don't think about it in the moment, but you do walk out with a lot of interesting life lessons and skills you can apply elsewhere. Especially you learn social communication. You can learn how to run a show, or you might pick up like filming or graphic design tips somehow, or even something as basic as, hey, you see all those guys repping the same colors or letters, maybe don't piss them off.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of lessons to be learned.
Yeah, definitely. I know. I know I've definitely learned a lot about life and got a lot of lifelong friends from going to shows and stuff. So it's definitely something very special to me. And I can't predict the future. Obviously, I'm still pretty young, but, I think it's going to be important to me for quite a while.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that never goes away. Even if you, speaking for myself, grow out of the point where I want to go to shows every single weekend or buy every single record that comes out or know everything about every band. But it's still, you kind of look back on that period with a lot of reverence. And I think it becomes part of your personality and part of your emotional and intellectual makeup. And that doesn't really change. And, I think that the opposite of that would be the twin poles of absurdity are, on one level, you have the people that sort of never grow up and they continue to behave like they're 18 years old and they just become super cringy and embarrassing and they've never really gotten it on a deep level, but they keep acting out the punk rock life on a superficial level. And then there's the other people who completely disavow their past and become, just like straight normal people, and everything that they experienced in hardcore and punk rock is kind of an embarrassment or just something that they dismiss, and they don't take that experience seriously. So those are the two kind of worst people to be, really. You want to be somebody that can function in the world, but who's learned valuable lessons from the experience and the lyrics and the messages and just the idea of like doing things yourself, which is at the heart of punk rock and hardcore and even metal is that DIY ethic.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. And those are definitely kind of the two worst people to be, the total tourist who takes it all for granted, or the guy who like sort of buys into the snake oil, and the sort of superficial elements of the subculture and the is like this is the lifestyle, and I'm doing this and I'm better than. I'm like, no, you're a loser who does drugs in a squat somewhere. Right.
Or like, the 55-year-old hardcore guy that walks around and like looks down on all these younger kids and thinks like, it was so much better when I was a kid. Everybody thinks everything was better when they were a kid.
Yeah.
That's been generational for probably hundreds of years. So I hate that idea that what kids are doing now, what music is now, what the scene is like now is worthless or isn't as good. And that's absolutely silly and untrue.
Yeah. And I like make fun of those people all the time because I know it's like a problem everywhere, but it feels like, especially from the city, it's been such like a consistent annoyance to me lately, is like all these like snobby, all these like snooty old heads whose entire personality is like, I got stabbed at CBGB's in 1995 and that makes me better than you. And I'm like, well, I go to plenty of shows that are crazy, but they're fun and I don't get stabbed. I might have to dodge a few bar stools once in a while, but I don't get stabbed.
Yeah, people romanticize danger too much. You get that a lot in New York City. You hear people that are like, well, New York's different now because it's this or that. And it's like, you know what? I enjoy going to New York and walking down certain streets and not worrying about being shot or stabbed or robbed. I consider that a plus. But, regardless, if you go through life and you abandon that earnestness or that sense of wonder, or that you cut off your ability to be impressed or interested or curious, then you're living a really basically miserable life.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. So I also want to ask, I don't know how much you know or are, involved with this, but I did see that some of the Celebrity Murders stuff has been getting re-released lately. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I kind of got surprised by that, honestly, because Mike just somehow worked it out. Mike DiLorenzo, he got it up on streaming platforms and stuff like that, and I didn't even know that it was happening. So I was like, okay, that's cool. And I listened to it actually for the first time in over 10 years. I haven't listened to that record, and I was like, oh, this was actually a good record. It was probably, those are my favorite lyrics I've ever written, actually, in any band. But most of the lyrics were coming from a very dark place, so I'm glad that I don't, it's like someone else wrote them, and that's good. So yeah, no, but I really like that record. I'm glad it's available to hear for people again. It's been sold out and unavailable for I don't know how long, and that was kind of like a really key band for me, and at a very weird period in my life, sort of between Indecision and moving to Chicago, really, or between Indecision and then like me becoming like, getting like a career job. That was what I was doing, and like I said, it feels like someone else did it, and it's kind of interesting to look back on it and remember what it was like and what was going through my brain with those words and the shows we played and the people we interacted with, and in a not always positively. So yeah, no, it's a good record. I'm glad it's available.
Yeah, for sure. And I do know, like, obviously now you're older and you've chilled out a lot, but I do know well of like the reputation that's probably been standing at least since like Milhouse. It's like, oh yeah, Artie Philie, he goes on stage and he talks all this shit.
Yeah, I didn't deliberately make that like my brand, quote unquote, but it sort of just fell into that. I think when I look back on like Milhouse and Celebrity Murders and even like the Champs and other bands I was in where I was like always trying to kind of get a rise out of people, I think I was very inspired by, Born Against, Sam McPheeters, Sheer Terror, SFA, all those bands that kind of like stirred the pot a lot. And I think when I was younger, when I was very young, I was pretty introverted. I wasn't, I didn't like to call attention to myself, and I always felt like kind of nervous around other people. And then when I got into punk rock and found myself sort of wanting to be in a band, I realized that there's this other side of me coming out that just wanted attention and wanted to kind of people to kind of look at me and listen to me. And the easiest way to do that is to be a giant and I sort of found that out instinctively and then played to that. And I think I always spoke from the heart, but I don't know if I necessarily needed to be that way all the time, but that's just kind of what it became. And then that became like a stamp on those bands that I was in too. Like, oh, what's going to happen now? Who's he going to get angry? Who's going to want to fight this guy or these guys and so on. And I don't regret it, but I feel a little silly now looking back on a lot of that stuff.
It's true, like I definitely had a point in my life where I was like, when I was a little younger, when I was like just starting college, when I was like high school, when I was in high school and when I was like starting college, where I was like incredibly volatile, and you definitely look back and feel silly for a lot of the things you've said and done. But I also feel like, I also feel in many ways that getting a rise out of people is a time-honored tradition in this music.
Yeah, I agree. That's true. It's funny. Ready for Death, the guitarist of Ready for Death is Dan, who used to, and I guess currently still occasionally plays in a band called Race Trader. And they were a big Chicago hardcore band in the 90s, about the same time that Indecision was a big band, or quote unquote big band. And we were playing in the same circles or whatever, but just for no reason. Like, I think we started, Race Trader was always like being interviewed and being very outspoken about race and discrimination and inequality, and we somehow decided that we were going to like antagonize them, and like I talked about them in some interview. I don't remember any of it, but this was all kind of brought to the front when Dan joined the band and we were talking, and then he's like, "Yeah, I think we had beef in the '90s," and I'm like, "I think you're right, but I don't remember what or why or what was said." And he's like, "I don't know," and we both kind of agreed that anything we did when we were in our 20s can't be held against us. So.
Yeah. Race Trader is also another one of my like favorite bands ever. I've seen them a couple of times, and I had Manny on the show a few years ago too, and great dude. And it's funny too, because like I know like the way you guys got a rise out of people and the way Race Trader got a rise out of people are totally different, but in many ways I feel like it comes from a similar place. And it's funny too, like old 90s beef, because like I remember Manny had a great story about how when the Refused was touring the US in the 90s, he showed up to one of their shows and like chewed them out for being sellouts, and then fast forward to, I think, right before the COVID pandemic, and Race Trader was opening for Refused, and like a run of shows that Refused did on like the East Coast.
Yeah, it's funny how that works out. I mean, I don't know. I can't even, I'm sure there's like dozens and dozens of people who I made enemies of back then that I wouldn't even know how to explain it if I saw them today, but that's just part of like you said, it's part of hardcore and punk rock. Is just like, you want to be confrontational. There's not always something to confront directly, so you just sort of turn around and self-cannibalize each other. And it's like a hormonal thing too, I think.
Yeah, it definitely is at that age where you're still not everything in your brain is quite set yet, in your 20s. Like you're an adult, but not quite yet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like most of my day to day at that age was governed by like, eating, hooking up with girls, and sort of trying to figure out who I could goad into a fight or an argument or something like that. And that was like, those are like my three main priorities day to day. And then I was even straight edge for most of that part too. So I didn't even introduce drinking as a fourth priority until like, my late 20s.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's always like one of my favorite things when you find out that like the craziest person you met at a show was straight edge, and you're like, wow, it's not the booze or the drugs; they're just actually crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of people like that. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, hardcore, where the lunatics run the asylum.
Yeah, basically. It's amazing that there's this whole scene built on like, putting out your own music, putting out zines, doing shows, creating a whole infrastructure of like art. And then it's all governed by people who are like immature, insane, or some combination of both.
Yeah, that's 100% true. On that observation, I think we're going to have to wrap this up. But before I go, you want to shout out anything Ready for Death's got coming up?
We don't have anything really coming up. We have some local Chicago area shows and like Milwaukee shows, but that won't interest anybody at NCC. But we're hopefully going to have our record's still out on Translation Lost Records, still available. And it sounds like, like a punk rock bolt thrower meets Exodus kind of thing. So if that's your bag, and hopefully we'll have something else out before the end of 2024. But other than that, yeah. Oh, and I think there might be some Milhouse event happening at some point too, which I don't know if I can officially announce yet, but apparently we might have something like that happening, like a last show or something.
If it happens, I'm canceling all my plans that day. I don't care who's dying, who's getting married. They can bite it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to. It could be a big disappointment, but right now it looks like because we had that record get reissued on Rec Age, the Milhouse album, and now we're like kind of owe Artie Shepherd a show to support it and help sell a couple of copies. So it's kind of the mode we're talking about now. So that might be in December.
All right, sounds good. I'll keep my ear to the ground for that. And of course, the Celebrity Murders record is back up on I don't even know if it was on streaming in the first place. But,
I don't think it ever was.
Yeah, but it is now. I know it's on Bandcamp. I think it's on like Spotify and stuff too. I don't use that stuff, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, no, I mean it's good for the car.
yeah. I like I usually listen to CDs in the car. I was listening to like I was listening to like a copy of a Revenge CD I got last night on the way here.
Oh, okay.
So
excellent.
But yeah, thank you so much for calling in, Artie. This definitely means a lot to me, and I'm glad that we could have this incredible conversation.
Yeah, same to you. Thanks for taking the time.
No problem. We're going to get back into some music on FM Punk 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Riley, with Artie Philie.